It's been over 6 months since I last unboxed a new 3x3, and since then, I feel like the speedcubing market has kind of left me behind. So in hopes of catching up, I went to thecubicle.com and just bought everything on the best-selling list. Well, except for the backpack. And a few days later, this is what came in the mail. 4 new flagship speed cubes, each one in its top-of-the-line configuration. So today, we're going to find out which one of these new releases is the best, which one is the worst, and how they compare to the cubes that I've been using recently. Now I think the one I'm most excited about is the one that's been out the longest, the X-Man Tornado V3. Now I've been really enjoying the Tornado V2 recently. I found the turning to feel effortless, yet also very precise. It just fits my turning style very well, so I'm hoping that the V3 can do all of that and more. Now as you can see, this cube comes in 3 versions. All 3 of them have all the adjustment features that were on the V2, and the one that I bought, the Pioneer, at $40, also has core magnets and maglev. So that should help the cube be even more stable and even faster. Now this box was not especially easy to open, but on the inside it rewards you with the cube in a nice plastic box. Looks like we have a fancy GAN style plastic card, some instructions, a cleaning cloth, an adjustment tool, we'll take a look at that later, a nice holding bag, and it looks like some more instructions. This is all you really need to use the cube. I think they could have fit it in a slightly smaller box, but oh well. In my hands, it feels exactly the same as the V2. It might be like a 0.5 millimeter bigger, and the only visual difference is that this one has primary plastic insides, whereas this one obviously has black plastic insides. So let's go ahead and do some first turns. Ooh, so right off the bat, it comes in with that nice crunchy feeling of a brand new cube, kind of yet to be broken in, but at the same time, I can definitely feel that nice buttery smoothness of the Tornado. I'm happy to say that it doesn't feel like they've changed too much. It still feels like the nice, fast, controllable cube that I'm used to. If anything, now it's just a little bit faster, a little bit easier to do that double flick, probably because of the maglev. And if I just turn one side at a time like this, yeah, I can definitely feel those core magnets too. It feels like a very deep magnetic pull that kind of guides you into place gradually, rather than just a sharp magnetic click that you get at the very end of the turn. I guess that makes the turning feel a little bit more cushioned, a little bit less harsh, and makes an already very controllable cube even more controllable. I am going to have a quick look inside the mechanism. The pieces do look very similar to the ones in the V2. Here are the core magnets you can see down attached to the core and the corners. And if we pop open a center cap, we can see that the adjustment system looks pretty similar to the one on the V2, although I think you do adjust it a little bit differently. So let's grab our tool here and see what happens. Looks like we can pop this thing up and, oh, is that a handle? Oh my gosh, we can hold on to it. That's awesome. So that's a lot easier to turn than the old system. I really love that idea. And basically the way it works is you turn it one way for tensions and the other way for elasticity. So that's the Tornado V3. I'll leave my conclusions to the end, but let's just say I could very well see this becoming my new main. Okay, so which cube to try out next? Funnily enough, all 3 of these are actually from MoYu. This one's from a new sub-brand called HuaMeng. So I guess let's just go in order of price, starting from the cheapest and working up to the most premium WeiLong V9. First up, we have the MoYu Super RS3 M. Once again, there are 3 versions of this cube, starting from the basic $10 version, all the way up to the $20 version I have here, which has both maglev and core magnets. Now this has got to be the cheapest cube you can get with those sort of features, although I kind of question how much you even need them if you're going to be buying a budget cube anyway. The accessory box looks pretty simple. Looks like we have an instruction booklet, a screwdriver, some adjustment tools, and a replacement core with the magnets on it. That's pretty nice. I know they make a big deal about calling it a ball core, and it does look pretty cool, but effectively it's the exact same thing that GAN has been doing for years with their core magnets. The cube itself comes in MoYu's classic plastic box, which I already have at least a half a dozen of. In my hands, it looks and feels a lot like previous puzzles in the RS3 M lineup, although I will say these octagon-shaped centers are new, and if you ask me, they do look pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do some first turns. And it feels honestly just kind of tight. I mean, yeah, look at how little it stretches right there. I'm definitely gonna have to loosen it a little bit. Good thing it came with a screwdriver. While we're here, you can take a look inside the centerpiece. Very normal looking MoYu dual adjustment system. So you can use a screwdriver to change the tensions, or this little tool here to change the elasticity. So let's pop that back on and, oh yeah, now we're talking. So it definitely still feels like an RS3 M, so a little bit blocky compared to a flagship speed cube. That is going to help with stability, but it also means that the cube just isn't going to be as flexible, so you're not going to get the utmost in performance out of this thing. And I will say, normally I wouldn't be a fan of having maglev in a budget cube like this, but I think that extra guiding magnetic pull that you get from the core magnets actually does help control the speed in a way to make that feature seem a little bit more reasonable. But once again, I think I'll have a better conclusion once I've compared all 4 of these cubes, so let's just go ahead and move on to the next one, the HuaMeng YS3 M. Now the story behind this new sub-brand is that the 3x3 single world record holder, Yusheng Du, apparently helped design this puzzle. That's why it says 3.47 all over the box. Now this cube actually has not 3, but 4 different versions. So the one that I have here for $37 actually has all the features that we talked about before, the ball core and maglev, and it also has a nice UV coating, which is something that I haven't seen before other than on GaN cubes. So we have this little card here, our accessories, and the cube in what looks like a fancy new style of plastic box. So inside of here, we have a massive instruction booklet, and it looks like all the other normal stuff, screwdriver, adjustment tool, and these little things, which are supposed to be for tensioning, but I've never used them before. Unlike the last one, it looks like we have no replacement ball core though. Opening it up here, I like the look of this plastic box a little bit better, however unnecessary it may be. So this time, the puzzle looks very similar to a normal MoYu cube, but you can feel that nice protective UV coating. It just feels very smooth, a little bit glossy. My one complaint is that this makes the logo impossible to remove without destroying the finish, so you can never use this cube for blind solving in competition. That's why I really like what GaN has done recently by selling replacement blank center caps for their UV coated cubes. That way you can just swap them out. Anyway, I have no idea what to expect out of the turning, but given the price, I sure hope it feels like a high-end cube. And that is actually pretty nice. First impressions, it's nice and smooth and reasonably fast, but the main way I would describe it is very snappy. Like every turn just feels like a big clunk into place, and it's kind of loud as you're turning it. I can imagine if you have a very aggressive turning style, you might like this cube and all of that elastic tactile feedback it provides. I was also kind of surprised at how blocky this cube feels. Not quite like the RS3 M, but somewhere in between there and a normal MoYu cube. But again, I think that goes a long way towards making the cube feel very stable, while still being a lot more flexible than the RS3 M. I also hear that the corner cutting is really good, so let's try that out. It did 45 degrees with pretty much no effort right there. Can it go a little bit further? And with a little bit of effort, yes it can. That's by far the best corner cutting of any of these cubes so far. Inside of the cube, the piece design looks pretty simple. Nice flat surfaces on the edges, as well as some friction ridges, which are also all around the corners. You can see the magnet right there that attracts down into the core, but you can't actually see the core magnets because they're hidden inside of the ball. And if you pop open a center cap, it looks identical to on the RS3 M, just your standard dual adjustment system with maglev. Anyway, it's time to move on to the final and perhaps most exciting new release of this video, the MoYu WeiLong WRM V9 3x3 maglev ball core UV coated. Is that a long enough name for you? In all seriousness though, this cube jumps back down to just 3 versions, so if you get the ball core, you also have to get the UV coating, and this is the highest end version at $43. V9, of course, refers to the fact that there have been 9 versions of the WeiLong over the years, starting from the original way back in 2013. Inside the accessory box, it looks like it's going to be the same as the YS3 M, so instruction booklet and a bunch of tools, and the cube also comes in the same fancy new box, which I'm still getting used to how to open. Now on first glance, this cube doesn't look that similar to the previous version of the WeiLong. As you can see, gone are the purple internals, the pieces all look a lot more rounded, and of course you have that UV coating, which is new. I guess if you look at the shape of the pieces, you can certainly see the similarities, even all the way back to the original WeiLong. But hey, I just noticed something that I was not expecting. There are magnets on the edges. I imagine what they're doing here is copying GaN again by having magnets on the corners, which attract to the ball core, whereas the magnets on the edges repel from the core, so you kind of have attraction and repelling at the same time, giving you a little bit of extra guiding force as you do each turn. I like to call them maglev edges. The dual adjustment system under the center cap is the same as on the last two, in case you were wondering, but without further ado, let's go ahead and do some first turns. And that is awesome. Of course, it has the classic WeiLong feel, nice and smooth and very fluid, but the thing that stands out the most right now is that those core magnets are very aggressive. It must be the extra repulsion on those edges, but it's like every turn that you do, the cube is forcing you to align it perfectly. Like I'm purposely overshooting a little bit here, but as you can see, every single turn, the cube just lines up. In that way, it reminds me a lot of the GaN 13 maglev, how it almost turns for you automatically, except instead of light, airy, and almost out of control fast, this one just feels like the nice familiar WeiLong that I love. It fits my turning style a lot better. Those extreme core magnets are definitely something you have to get used to. Like instead of using a constant amount of force throughout your entire turn, you're using a bunch of force at the very beginning and then basically just letting go. So not everyone will love it. If you don't, you can always just save a bit of money and buy one of the versions without the ball core, but I like it enough that I'm certainly going to give it a shot at earning the title of my main. But while we're on the topic of conclusions, let's go ahead and revisit all 4 cubes that we explored in this video and sum up my thoughts on all of them. First of all, these two are hands down my favorite, the Tornado V3 and the WeiLong V9, but I was kind of expecting that going into this video. The Tornado V3 is everything that I love about the V2 with its ultra controllable turning with a bit of extra technology thrown in. Now if I were to buy it again, I'd probably forgo the maglev just because this cube is plenty fast without it and just buy the standard or only magnetic core version. The MoYu RS3 M Super turns great, but I have to say, if you're gonna splurge on features like maglev and core magnets, you might as well just spend a little bit more money and buy any of the other cubes in this video. If you're really on a budget, that's fine. Just buy the basic version of this cube for $10. I just don't really see the point of adding maglev and core magnets unless you really like the blocky feeling of this cube or just want to try out those features as cheap as possible. Next up, the HuaMeng YS3 M is a really interesting high-end option. I don't think it quite fits my turning style, but if you turn maybe a little bit faster, more aggressively, relying on that really good corner cutting and like the idea of a really snappy feeling cube, then this would definitely be a great choice for you. And finally, the WeiLong V9 is probably tied for my favorite, definitely the most unique turning cube out of all of these, and one of the most interesting cubes that MoYu's ever released. The ball core version, at least, takes the basic concept of the WeiLong and adds in those super aggressive core magnets to make it so you can basically never misalign it. If you're not so sure about that, you can also get the non-ball core version, which I'm sure also turns great while having a bit more of a traditional magnetic feel. But again, I'll have to pit these two cubes against each other to see which one, if either of them, can dethrone my main. Right now, I'm kind of tentatively feeling that this is the way that I'd rank them from least favorite to favorite, which also happens to be exactly least expensive to most expensive, although these two could definitely shuffle around at the top here, depending on how they feel as they break in. As always, you can buy all of these in whatever versions you want using the links down below to thecubicle.com, and you can use discount code Z3Cubing to get 5% off. Let me know in the comments if you have or are planning to buy any of these. I'd be curious to know what you think about them, but I hope you all enjoyed my little adventure through the last 6 months of speedcube releases, because that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time.